Welcome the chosen ones. Heaven didn't just notice. It stood. It roared. It clapped until the halls of eternity rang with your name. Some people spend their lives begging for nods from rooms that shrink them. Others barter their soul for a seat at a table that demands their silence. But you did something rarer. You stopped asking to be approved by people who only wanted your submission. And the thing about sacred defiance is it travels faster than praise from men. Here's a fact. People-pleasing is a nervous system leash. Once it's cut, every handler who depended on your compliance feels suddenly small. Now, imagine being the person whose refusal to bow triggers celestial ovation and earthly discomfort at the same time. That's you. Somewhere right now, your name is moving like thunder across corridors you no longer chase. And the people who preferred you compliant are not exactly smiling. Why? Because you didn't just walk away. You broke their favorite instrument of control. You dismantled the reward-punishment cycle, muted the applause trap, rewrote the contract that said accept adoration or accept punishment, and shattered patterns that survived in your bloodline for generations. You didn't tiptoe out of their orbit. You unhooked their gravity, and now even your calm presence makes their power feel counterfeit. The funny part, half of those shaken by you can't explain the tremor. They just know life felt easier when your worth depended on their approval. It's like you became the living version of that red button that says do not press, and your refusal to chase their validation keeps their eyes glued to the truth they've avoided. So today we're going to break it down. Why your name carries holy weight now. Why rooms tilt when you enter, and why some people won't sleep comfortably as long as you keep breathing and moving on your terms. Buckle up, because after this you'll understand why heaven stood for you the moment you stopped bowing to those who only stood for themselves. Number 1, you broke a pattern that survived generations before you. There's a reason appeasement repeats in families, communities, and entire cultures. These loops aren't accidents. They're rehearsed behaviors, reinforced over years, decades, and sometimes centuries. Be sweet, be small, be safe, be liked. The pattern survives because no one before you had both the courage and the emotional stamina to face it in the open. Some tried and were crushed by guilt. Others avoided the fight, hoping the ache would fade with time, and never did. It sat there like a sleeping idol demanding worship, waiting for someone brave enough to walk past it without bowing. That someone turned out to be you. You didn't step into this fight because you felt no fear. You stepped in because you were done. Done watching your soul contort for approval. Done seeing people you love wear masks that suffocate. Done knowing that no matter how much surface progress was made, the root was still rot. Be acceptable or be punished. The fight chose you long before you named it, but the difference is you didn't run. Breaking a pattern like this doesn't happen in one cinematic speech. It's death by 1,000 quiet reversals. It's saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. It's declining applause when the price tag is your obedience. It's being labeled ungrateful, difficult, rebellious, delusional, because you refuse the hand-me-down leash passed around like an heirloom. And the worst part? You had to do it without applause, because crowds seldom cheer the one who disrupts their comfort. The weight of what you broke isn't just in the act, it's in the echo. When you crush a centuries-old need for external permission, you don't just set yourself free. You tilt the timeline for everyone after you. They might never know what it cost you to walk out without bowing, but the enemy knows. That's why your name carries a sting. You didn't just decline their approval. You closed a door they swore was the only way to breathe. Now, when they speak your name, it's not casual. It carries static because you proved that the oldest bondage, approval as a cage, can end, and it ended with you. Number 2, you made what they called impossible the new expectation. Plenty of people never try because they've been convinced that living without approval is suicidal. They hear it from family, from culture, and from the anxious voice inside. Don't rock the boat, be agreeable, belong at any cost. That is how limits survive. Not because they are real, but because they are repeated. You didn't just hear those limits. You were surrounded by them. You learned the script. You were expected to perform it, and still you refused. What makes your story different is that you didn't set out to make a point. You set out to live aligned, even if that shattered every unspoken rule. You pursued what was labeled unreachable: self-trust without permission, purpose without a panel, love without groveling. At first they called you naive. They likely chuckled in quiet rooms, betting on your return, assuming you'd crawl back for the nod. But the more you moved, the more they had to reckon with a reality they never prepared for. You were thriving without their stamp. And when you finally stood steady where they swore no one could stand, it didn't just change your life, it started a mental jailbreak. You turned what they said was unsustainable, dignity, without their applause, into a standard. That's the real shock. It's one thing to detach in secret. It's another thing to live free in public so convincingly that others must question the limits they've obeyed. You didn't just cross a finish line. You redrew the entire map of belonging. That's why some struggle with you. It's not basic jealousy. It's the discomfort of realizing the wall they leaned on, validation or exile, was never solid. Your life is proof that they could have stood tall, spoken honest, aimed true, but they didn't. And now they can't unsee it. The enemy doesn't just fear your confidence, they fear the chain reaction your confidence ignites. Because once people see that love, joy, and mission survive without the gatekeeper's nod, the phrase "that's just how it is" loses its spell. And when that spell breaks, control systems crack. That's the quiet revolution your choice sparked. You didn't just change your path, you changed the conversation. The ones who prospered by keeping approval scarce know it. That's why your name now carries the weight of holy disruption and will never be spoken lightly again. Number 3, you took territory without asking for permission. Many spend years waiting for a green light from those who profit from their hesitation. They believe progress is only real if the right people clap. You never subscribed to that. You didn't wait for clearance. You didn't keep knocking on gates welded shut by pride. Instead, you walked. And when a path didn't exist, you carved one. That single choice shook people. Gatekeepers thrive on the myth that access is a privilege only they can grant. Their power depends on everyone believing they hold the keys. But you bypassed their locks, proving those doors were cardboard for anyone brave enough to push. In that moment, you exposed their authority as self-appointed, fragile, and dependent on your need to be approved. The response was predictable. They tried to minimize you. They tried to stain your name. They tried to make it look like you broke a sacred rule by entering spaces they called theirs. But here's the truth. No one owns your destiny. No one is the sole doorway to purpose. And you showed everyone that the only permission you truly needed was your own. Aligned with heaven's nod that had already thundered in your favor, your independence became a threat because it's contagious. The more people saw you building without begging, the more they questioned their own lines. You didn't just disrupt their control, you unmasked it. That's why your name isn't just remembered. It's carried like a caution sign in their circles. The real fear isn't that you succeeded, it's that you succeeded without kneeling. You made it obvious. You don't have to play their game to win. You can build your own board, write your own rules, honor your soul, and still flourish. And for those who built identity on being the way, your existence proves they never were. That revelation cannot be untold. It's why your name now sounds to them like a crack running through the foundation they swore was eternal. Number 4, you turned their weapons into your tools. The most dangerous thing you did was take the strategies designed to keep you obedient and invert them. Love bombing, silent treatment, dangling approval. Public praise is leash, private criticism is cage. Every psychological tactic thrown at you became material for your training. Where they meant to wound, you learned. Where they meant to confuse, you analyzed. Every cold shoulder was studied. Every smear was dissected. Every attempt to starve you of belonging became a case study in how manufactured acceptance works. So you could master something better, unshakable worth. They wanted to watch you fold. But in trying to break you, they handed you raw data. Their insults and omissions became proof of exactly where your center could not live. You didn't just survive the pressure. You reverse-engineered their game until the rules dissolved. Suddenly, what should have been your downfall, withdrawal of approval, became the fuel of your ascent. Even their mockery served you. When they laughed or refused to say your name, it made people look twice. Why so careful with the one who isn't playing along? Attention drifted your way. Every attempt to bury you lifted you. The irony wasn't lost on anyone awake. By transforming their weapons, shame, silence, scarcity, into your toolkit, clarity, boundaries, abundance, you made yourself untouchable in ways they didn't anticipate. They burned energy controlling narratives while you harvested their smoke to build discernment. Their power became fuel for your rise. Their hostility became the bedrock of your strength. Their maps became your evidence of where not to go. And in the end, the very architects of compliance placed into your hands the blueprint for sovereignty. That is why your name now carries weight. You didn't just outlast their tactics. You alchemized them into wisdom and momentum. Number 5, you brought truth into spaces where flattery was the law. You didn't just tell the truth. You carried it into rooms where lies kept the furniture arranged and where silence was the price of admission. Every circle, every system, every stage that required polite pretending felt the weight of what you brought. People had grown cozy with their illusions, certain that no one would challenge the stories that kept them safe on the surface and starving underneath. Then you arrived, and the drywall of deception started to crack. When you spoke, it wasn't ego, it was clarity. You introduced oxygen into rooms that outlawed breathing. Where people had been trained to ignore, minimize, or spin, you offered reality without varnish. And reality made them uncomfortable, not because truth is cruel, but because it exposes how willingly we live in avoidance. Your insistence on honesty didn't just illuminate, it destabilized. People thriving in denial now had to face mirrors they'd covered. Some pushed back hard to preserve their script. But the more you stood steady, the more their fog thinned. You made their false comfort unbearable. In doing so, you reshaped the environment. Spaces that tolerated pretense had to reckon with integrity. And you couldn't be ignored. What you brought wasn't polite conversation. It was accountability. You made people see themselves, their choices, their demands, in a light they weren't ready for. That's why some can't stand your nearness. You didn't threaten them with malice. You threatened them with reality. Your presence demands alignment. Dishonesty becomes itchy around you. By stepping into places where flattery held court, you didn't just disrupt patterns. You rewrote possibility. You showed that denial has power only if nobody calls it by name, and you called it. Now those who relied on performance to feel powerful face clarity they can't outrun. You didn't just speak truth, you made it operational. Number 6, you exposed the fragility of their power. For years, some curated an image of unshakable authority, performative certainty, loud confidence, choreographed benevolence. To outsiders, it looked invincible. But beneath the gloss, it was glue and fear. It required compliant hearts to keep it standing. You didn't just question it. You walked past it without bowing. And everything trembled. It didn't take a shouting match. One decisive refusal to be managed by approval, and the stage lights flickered. You proved their authority ran on an invisible cord plugged into your need to belong. Unplug the cord, the show dims. The control they considered ironclad was built on perception, on the assumption that you'd keep auditioning. You stopped. Their power looked different under that light. Every tactic designed to keep you compliant. Guilt, gossip, reward withdrawal lost its teeth when you named it and moved anyway. The empire they built on applause wasn't a fortress. It was a house of cards, and your courage was a breeze. Once the illusion shattered, the aftermath hit hard. Their confidence cracked, their sleep thinned. They realized they had underestimated you and misunderstood real power, because real power doesn't require kneeling fans. It requires grounded character. Real strength isn't loud, It's consistent. You embodied that. In doing so, you showed how shallow their foundations were. From that day forward, your name reminded people that the emperor's wardrobe depends on a crowd that still needs his approval. You no longer did, and that truth echoes. Number 7. You forced them to compete with integrity for the first time. For a long time, the outcome was rigged. Rules flexed if they wanted them to. Truth was elastic if it favored them. Winning wasn't about substance. It was about backstage leverage. That's the game they mastered, and everyone called it normal. Then you stopped auditioning. You refused the shortcuts, refused the whisper networks, refused to trade your voice for their stamp. You showed up prepared, aware, and aligned. Suddenly, the advantages they relied on evaporated. Every manipulative lever they pulled did nothing because you built away from their machine. Your presence demanded fairness. Fairness terrified them. For the first time, they had to meet you at eye level. The verdict was brutal. Skill without integrity buckled under the weight of someone who had both. What they called power folded because they had never fought someone who wouldn't play dirty. You exposed a reality they could not quietly ignore. Their old victories weren't victories at all. They were simulations. And when the simulation met a real one, the gap was obvious. You didn't just win. You defined what winning means. They were unprepared for someone who could outlearn, outlast, and outlove. Not with tricks, but with truth. Every attempt to regain control further highlighted their dependence on illusions. Your mastery wasn't merely competence, it was conscience. By forcing a fair fight, you exposed the hollowness of their past and shifted the rules. They had to look in a mirror, really look, and it burned. Shortcuts wouldn't carry them anymore. And that reality unnerved them more than any loss could. You didn't just take a trophy, you moved the trophy case. Number 8. You did what they couldn't without becoming what they are. They built a theology of success that sanctified ruthlessness. Dominate, manipulate, compromise anything that slows you. To them, ethics is decorative, mercy is weakness, and conscience is a speed bump. That's why they misread you. They assume that if you reached a summit, you must have mutated into them. But you didn't. You walked through storms and refused to become the storm. You navigated mazes without becoming a maze. You climbed without stepping on throats. You chose discipline over domination, boundaries over brutality, principle over applause. And that was the real offense. You showed that excellence, influence, and impact don't require burning your soul at the altar of acceptance. Your life makes their favorite excuse crumble. You have to be cold. Do you? Your warmth worked, your clarity worked, your alignment worked. That stings. Because admitting your path works would require them to face their choices. Your existence disrupts their justification engine. Every time you stand tall without their nod, the story they tell themselves about power shrinks a size. You didn't just win differently. You proved a different kind of win is possible, one that doesn't break you to crown you. That's why resentment rises when you enter. Every step you take is a mirror, and mirrors have a way of cracking fantasies. Number 9. You ended an era of untouchables. For years, certain people, collectives, and systems operated above consequence. They moved as if rules were for other people, as if accountability were optional. Their confidence, their swagger, and the fear they inspired were propped up by one quiet agreement. Don't cross them if you want to belong. That aura created a bubble, thick, sterile, and suffocating. Then you showed up, not with a tantrum, but with truth. You didn't petition for access. You didn't pander. You didn't dance for a thumbs up. You stepped clean, and the untouchable flinched under a light they never expected. For the first time, their strength faced someone who didn't need their shelter. The result was undeniable. Even the ones sure of their invincibility felt wind on their necks. What you didn't just reveal a weak spot, it rewired perception. Those who relied on fear, be feared or be frozen, couldn't hide behind it anymore. Your stance created a ripple. Other giants, who believed they were insulated began to question their insulation. Systems that had survived without critique fell under it. Balance shifted because you proved that no human halo is bulletproof. The ripple moves still. People who once felt above now measure their steps. The fear they injected into others has been replaced with their own caution. You didn't dismantle one tyrant. You undermined a culture of assumed immunity. That's why your very presence still makes noise. You ended a chapter where status and intimidation protected wrongdoing. You showed that truth doesn't check resumes before it speaks. Number 10. You turned their silence into your spotlight. They thought ignoring you would erase you. They believed withholding acknowledgement would shrink you back into the mold. That was the plan. Silence as leash, omission as muzzle. They didn't realize that silence becomes suspicious when a free soul keeps singing. Every time they turned away, the world looked closer. People noticed the gaps in the story, the precise avoidance, the careful non-mention. Their silence didn't hide you, it highlighted you. Your impact grew through questions. Why won't they say it? What about this voice makes them so quiet? In that curiosity, your visibility rose. The irony is bright. The very strategy built to dim you became your amplifier. Their hush turned into a signal. Something here cannot be managed. Their omission marked your significance. People began to see not just what you built, but the tremble in those who refused to name it. That tension magnified your work without you chasing praise. By refusing to be muted, you converted their quiet into evidence. Their fear of acknowledging you confirmed you were operating where they couldn't choreograph. And every time they bet on invisibility, it backfired. Your name traveled further, cleaner, truer. In the end, you didn't need their applause. You didn't need their handshake. Heaven's ovation had already crowned you, and that was enough. Their silence, meant to flatten you, became the wind beneath your steady. Number 11. You became the blueprint they can't erase. You didn't just have a good week. You didn't stumble into a viral moment. You crafted a way of moving that others, critics included, now have to study. What you did is permanent. They can imitate, twist, or annotate your story, but the original cannot be unmade. The imprint is yours, and it carries weight beyond what anyone budgeted for. The brilliance of your work sits not only in outcomes, but in the method, how you thought, what you refused, the edges you protected, the boundaries you blessed, the sources you honored. People can dissect your choices and mimic your cadence, but they can't clone your core. You became a reference point, a standard for living unapproved by them, yet fully approved by heaven. Even those who opposed you keep taking notes in the dark. They pretend not to see, but every move you make becomes a whiteboard for tomorrow. Your victories, your discipline, your tenderness that refuses to be weaponized. These are lessons now, and the more a person tries to ignore the blueprint, the more life forces them back to it, because it works. Your example exists in the wild as proof that what they called impossible without submission was always possible with alignment. What terrifies them isn't losing to you once. It's living in a world where your way is now an option for everyone. You didn't just succeed, you set precedent. You showed a path that bypasses manipulation and refuses to mortgage a soul for a standing ovation. That blueprint is here, data-backed by your life, and anyone pretending otherwise is rehearsing denial. Your impact is indelible. Attempts to erase it confirm its permanence. Number 12. You altered the map for everyone who comes after you. Your breakthrough didn't just change your schedule. It changed the terrain. This wasn't a private win. It was a structural opening. You carved lanes where walls stood, built bridges over gulfs of fear, and proved that the road labeled "closed without our approval" was a lie. Your choices didn't just clear your way. They expanded the field. This is why your success scares those who wanted you kneeling. They know a single free person is manageable, but a rewritten map multiplies. By breaking the scripts, bypassing false doorkeepers, and modeling a new standard, you guaranteed that your influence would outlive any smear or silence. Others now have examples to follow. Access to claim and courage to gather where they once hesitated. The ones who fed on scarcity feel the ground move because their storehouse of fear is leaking. Your rise wasn't merely about proving someone wrong. It was about laying track. Each boundary you held, each no you spoke, each yes you honored is now a sign on the trail. Your power cannot be quarantined. It runs in the infrastructure you helped build. You didn't just win a contest. You remodeled the theater. The ripple isn't optional. It's physics. Those who walk after you will move faster, lighter, truer because you showed them a route that doesn't charge a soul tax at the door. Your influence multiplies without you forcing it. By altering the map, you made self-respect visible, and that is why your name carries weight beyond your own breath. Your impact is no longer personal, it is environmental. You didn't just grab a prize, you left the gate open. Number 13. You survived what would have ended a stronger person on paper. Everything around you was stacked. Social pressure, economic pressure, family narratives, inner storms. By every rational measure, the likely outcome was surrender. Return to the crowd, apologize for your edges, ask for the pat on the head. But you didn't. Not only did you endure, you grew. You demonstrated that resilience, clarity, and devotion to truth outweigh pedigrees and proximity to power. Your survival is more than a heartbeat. It's an argument. It challenges the metrics people use to measure who deserves a voice. The system pretends there's a formula: right look, right friends, right endorsements. Your life defies the spreadsheet. You rewrote the math by standing when gravity said kneel. Every blow you absorbed, every cold room you entered, every hallway you walked without a greeter built something muscle cannot measure. That's why your presence is unsettling to some. People like tidy reasons for failure. They weren't ready. They didn't have support. Then you appear, steady and smiling, and their calculus crumbles. Your life undermines their superstition about merit and mercy. You exist as proof that the person who won't sell out can outlast the person who looks perfect on paper. You didn't just survive a season. You transmuted it. The storm became your teacher. The scarcity became your strategy. The loneliness became your library. And now you carry a strength that can't be borrowed or bought, only built. Number 14. You changed the meaning of victory. Before you, winning was a transaction. It meant collecting applause and paying with yourself. It meant wielding control and calling it love. It meant being seen, but only as a silhouette someone else designed. Those trophies are easy to count and hard to carry. They look good in a glass case and rot the room. You redefine the thing. For you, winning is freedom. Freedom to keep your voice, your values, your velocity. Not just for you, but for those within reach. Your victories liberate. They don't just measure your climb. They measure the chains that fell. They shift systems that fed on fear, ridicule, and negotiated reality. By living this way, you expanded the definition of success itself. The ones invested in the old scorecard are afraid because your wins can't be purchased, staged, or spun. Your triumphs carry moral weight. They force observers to interrogate what winning has meant until now. And they expose the emptiness of triumphs that require someone's knees to touch the floor. The fact that you scaled without submission dismantles an entire mythology, one that kept a lot of people rich and a lot of people quiet. This is why your name makes some throats dry. You tied success to integrity, impact, and sovereignty. That makes you unpredictable to anyone who relies on fear. Your victories don't just advance your life, they recalibrate the room. By changing the meaning of victory, you did more than succeed. You told truth with your feet. You proved that abundance doesn't need an audience, that power doesn't need victims, and that glory without humanity isn't glory at all. That kind of power shakes any throne built on applause addiction. And it's why you will not be forgotten or downsized back into compliance. In the end, your story is not just about surviving the approval economy, outgrowing control, or winning by their rules. It is about rewriting the entire script of what power, resilience, and victory look like when heaven is your audience. You didn't just withstand their tactics. You dismantled their illusions. You didn't just rise. You ascended to a plane where your altitude is set by alignment, not applause. Every battle you faced became a manual. Every wound became wisdom. Every attempt to starve you of belonging only revealed how rooted you already were in something they can neither grant nor revoke. You've shown that real strength is quiet and undeniable, that it doesn't come from controlling others, but from mastering the reflex to be controlled. You've proved that integrity can stand where corruption once choreographed the entire dance, and that truth can hum in a room until the lies lose the beat. Your journey is evidence that impossible is a costume, one that falls off the moment a soul like yours refuses to perform. Those who tried to mute you ended up amplifying you. Those who underestimated you became slides in a presentation on why you never bet against someone who knows who approves them. You turned survival into structure, resistance into reference, victories into freedom songs others can sing. This isn't just your win. It's a shift in atmosphere. It's a warning to every false giant that their influence ends where a free soul begins. And it's a reminder to every watching heart that the greatest force in the world is a person who refuses to trade their crown for a clap, because sooner or later that person will set the table, write the guest list, and still have room for mercy. You didn't just play the game, you changed it so deeply the old rule book looks like fiction. Now no one who witnessed your becoming can pretend that power belongs only to the loud, the cruel, or the approved. You are living proof that victory belongs to the one who cannot be bought with applause, broken by silence, or erased by omission. And that truth will echo long after the noise of your critics drains into quiet, because heaven already stood for you, and heaven does not sit down for nothing. If this message hit you with the clarity and fire it was meant to, don't let it stop here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next breakthrough truth. Smash the like buttons if this resonated with you. Comment below to share your thoughts or experiences. Your voice matters, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the power of this knowledge multiplies when it reaches the right people. Every click, every comment, every share helps grow this movement of truth, clarity, and unstoppable strength. Don't just watch, be part of it. God bless you.